Hello and welcome to my review of the Codex Space Marines HQ section. Now, I've had a few requests to compare the brand new Codex, which just came out in August 2019, with the Codex Adeptus Astartes Space Marines, which came out 2 years ago in 2017. And I thought I would do it justice by comparing both of the books section by section and then doing an overall review at the end. Kind of like when the new releases come out and I review each of the units kind of individually and compare them to other models in the army. I'd like to do that with this, or I'd like to start doing that with my Codex reviews and first looks. So throughout the whole of this video, the old Space Marine Codex will be on the left and the new one will be on the right. Straight away, I'll tell you that the brand new Codex has 192 pages and the previous Codex has 208 pages. So you're losing 16 pages. They're mainly data sheets, although in the new Codex, I want to say it's a bit more efficient in that they've crammed quite a few data sheets on one page, if that makes sense. The old Codex was £30 when that first came out. The new one is cheaper. It is £25 for almost the same content. And when I say the same content, you're getting more data sheets for the new units, for models that they make, but you're missing out on all the characters, and we'll go through that very shortly. So first things first, let's open them up. Now it's only been 2 years, and it is literally about 2 years. It's not like 2.5 years or anything like that since, you know, from this Codex to the new one. And you've got to remember that the old Codex kind of had, I won't count those pictures as sort of fluff, but I will definitely count from there. It had 109 pages of fluff, which hasn't changed that much in 2 years. You compare that to the new Codex, which I would say has 89. So although the storyline has improved, you're missing out on sort of 20 pages there of you know, unit profiles and of unit backstory. Instead, you're getting kind of like some chapter specific pictures and things. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to see, you know, pictures of 3D pictures of sort of shoulder pauldrons and things, because they're pretty much the same but slightly different per chapter. Of course, if you compare that to the older Codex, you know, you're not getting you know, a lot of the unit specific things that you had before, and some of them are on more pages and there are more units. Now, without further ado, let's have a look at the example armies. Now, what we had before was this small, like, little army example, which you get in quite a few of the other codexes. You no longer get that in the new book. You just get an example of a large, predominantly Primaris force. Yes, the smaller force has the Primaris. I mean, technically it has the Primaris that you find in the Dark Imperium, which is fine, but you've got 5 Hellblasters, 5 Intercessors, the Captain in Gravis armour, and 3 Inceptors with the Assault Bolters. The new Codex doesn't have that, but if we compare the example armies in both of these, there is quite a few Primaris units in their example army, but there's also some kind of legacy Marines, as I want to call them now. You've got a big squad of tactical Space Marines there, which is awesome. You've got a lovely Predator Annihilator. You've got some Vanguard veterans. You've got a Land Speeder poking out, and you've even got some scouts. Yeah, they do showcase, you know, some of the new models like the Chaplain and the Librarian, you know, all these Primaris models, and the Repulsor, of course. But if you compare it to the new Codex, not a single Legacy Space Marine there. It's all of the Primaris, and they've made sure to include all of the new models that are out or coming out, with the exception of that Phobos or Incursor Lieutenant. They don't have him here, which is a bit of a shame. But they do have the Eliminators, they do have the Incursors, the Impulsor, and the Repulsor Executioner and the Invictus Warsuit, which is kind of hard to miss. Anyway, I thought I'd make those comparisons first of all before we hop on over to the HQ section. Now, the HQ section here, quite rightly, starts off with, in the old Codex, it starts with Marneus Calgar, which will be in the Ultramarine supplement. Rabute Guilliman, or Guilliman, whatever you want to call him. He is right at the back, just here. He's got his own page. He's not present in the new Space Marine Codex at all. You get no named characters in this. You have to wait for the supplements for that. In the old Codex, you've then got Chief Librarian Tigurius, Chaplain Cassius, and Captain Sicarius. Sergeant Kronos, Sergeant Telion. So there you've got 6 special characters already for Ultramarines, which I would expect are in the Ultramarine supplement. I haven't watched any videos yet, but there's 6 that you're losing from the new Codex straight away. Then you've got Captain Lysander from the Imperial Fists, Pedro Cantor from the Crimson Fists. Then moving to Black Templars, you've got High Marshal Helbrecht, the Emperor's Champion, which is quite poor that you don't get Emperor's Champion in there anymore. And you also get Chaplain Grimaldus and the Cenobite Servitors. So there you're losing 4 characters there from Black Templars. Then you're missing Kasoro Khan, which is in the White Scar supplement. Vulcan Heston from the Salamanders. Kavan Shrike from Raven Guard. And then you're into the HQ. So straight away you can see the differences from the vanilla sort of Codex. You've got Captain in Terminator armor here, but in the new Codex it starts off with Primaris typically. So right here you've got a Primaris Captain, not a Captain in Terminator armor, which is a bit later on. So we're going to look at these data sheets in detail and see if there are many changes to them. So what I will do is, because the old Codex sort of lays it out, in my eyes, a better layout in terms of normal Space Marines, Legacy Space Marines, in terms of captains, and then we hit with the Primaris stuff. Look, you've got Librarian and then Primaris Librarian, Librarian Terminator armor. So that's a bit odd that it goes from Primaris to Librarian Terminator, then Chaplain Terminator, Chaplain, then Primaris. I think it should actually be the model in Terminator armor, like, you know, I think that should have been Librarian in Terminator armor, then in Power armor, then in Primaris. But they've changed their layout for the new one. In a way, it's been flipped on its head. So now you've got Primaris units, the Terminator armor units, and then finally just the Legacy Space Marines. So I'll be reading from the main Codex first and comparing it, the datasheet, with the old rules. I don't very much like to use the term old rules because actually they're only sort of 2 years old. The new Codex starts off with the Primaris Captain, which is here in the old Codex. The old Primaris Captain is a power points cost of a 6, but the new one is cheaper at 5. The old Captain was a match play points cost of 87 points, and the new one is 78 points. So again, cheaper. How does their stat line read? Well, it's exactly the same. You'll be pleased to know. So, you know, movement 6 inches, weapon skill and ballistic skill both 2+, strength and toughness of 4, wounds 6, attacks 5, leadership 9, and a save of 3+. Weapon wise, there are 2 additions here. Your Primaris Captain can now carry a plasma pistol and a power fist, which is great. I think Imperial Fist Captain had a power fist, Primaris power fist model, so that's great, and it explains that in the war gear options. Obviously, they get the Angels of Death special rule, so that's the big change there. Moving on to a Captain in Gravis armor, which is here. Again, in the old Codex it's power points cost of a 7, in the new Codex it's power points cost of 6, so cheaper. In the old Codex it was a points cost of 102, and in the new Codex it's 90, so again dropped 12 points, so cheaper as well. The stat line is slightly different. The new Codex, you've got an extra wound there, so you've got 7 wounds, but everything else is the same. Weapon wise, exactly the same. and rules are exactly the same. Obviously he gets the Angels of Death. Moving forward to the Captain in Phobos armor. Now, we didn't have a Captain in Phobos armor in the old Codex, but I can tell you that that Captain is a power points cost of a 5. The same stat line as the Primaris Captain. Weapon wise though, he's equipped with a master crafted Instigator bolt carbine and combat knife. He's also got a camo cloak and an Omni Scrambler, even though it specifically doesn't say he's got an Omni Scrambler. We take it that he has, because that's one of his abilities, and he's got the Iron Halo as well. Captain in Terminator armor, we have to go back a little bit in the old Codex, and that was the first Captain entry. He's dropped in points. He was a power points cost of a 7, he's now a power points cost of a 6. He was 105 points and now he's 95, so again dropped 10 points. If you want to give him a Thunder Hammer, it's going to cost you 40 points compared to previously 21 points. So yeah, that's the big thing in this Codex for match play, is that Thunder Hammers have gone up by 19 points. So yeah, if you want Thunder Hammers on your characters, that's where some of the sort of rebalancing has gone. Made the characters cheaper, but you pay more for the war gear. Stat line wise though, he's got exactly the same stat line. He's still got this wrist mounted grenade launcher. He can be equipped with a wrist mounted grenade launcher. I think there's only one model that has a wrist mounted grenade launcher. I think that was like an event model. So yeah, if you want one, yeah, it's going to be quite hard to get. But what's interesting is he's got a list there for the ability for a Storm Shield. It's one of the Terminator melee weapons, so they've put it there anyway. He's still got the Terminator Strike. But in the previous Codex, he's got a list there for the Storm Shield, and doesn't have the list, and he has the Storm Shield in the new Codex too. But this time, the war gear options, it actually says a model can have a Storm Shield instead of being equipped with one Storm Bolter or one Power Sword. Moving forward to Captain in Cataphractii armor, which is right here. In the old Codex, that was actually a power points cost of an 8, and in the new Codex, it's dropped 2 power points, so it's only a power points cost of a 6. In the old Codex, he was a points cost of 126, and in the new Codex, he's a points cost of 95. So again, cheaper. Stat line wise, exactly the same stat line there. Weapon wise, the same. Rules wise, the same. Although this time he's got a little note here about Storm Shield, so you can have the Cataphractii with a Storm Shield. I mean, Cataphractii armor gives you a 4+ invulnerable anyway, so you know, but 3+ invulnerable would also be quite nice. Then we look at a Captain, normal Captain here. They're both exactly the same power points cost, and exactly the same stat line. Captain was 74 points, and it's exactly the same points in the new Codex, so they're both 74 points. Weapon wise, exactly the same. You still get the relic blades and things, same abilities. Obviously he gets the Angels of Death. Captain on bike, exactly the same power points cost and exactly the same stat line, same weapon, same abilities, same turbo boost. Lieutenants though, so lieutenants I think are here. Lieutenants, in the old Codex they were power points cost of a 4, now they're a power points cost of a 5. So lieutenants have gone up a bit of a tax on them. Their stat line is exactly the same. They've still got the weapon skill 2+ and ballistic skill of 3. They've still got the same weapon loadouts and war gear options, and they've got the same abilities as well. Primaris lieutenants, they were power points cost of a 5, they're now a 4. So they've gone down in price, but they're exactly the same stat line. They've got exactly the same weapons, they've got the tactical precision. Don't leave home without one, especially as they're now cheaper. Then we've got Librarian, which was way back here. Librarian, the old power points cost, it was a 6, and now it is a 5. Exactly the same stat line there. Weapon wise, they've got exactly the same things, the 4 staves, 4 axes, things like that. Same war gear options. Then lieutenants in Phobos armor, we didn't have them in the old Codex, but they're a power points cost of a 4, so quite cheap. Movement 6 inches, weapon skill 2+, ballistic skill 3+, strength and toughness 4, 5 wounds, 4 attacks, leadership 8, and a save of 3+. So that is the same stat line as the normal lieutenant. but their weapons are different. And they've got the camo cloaks. So these lieutenants in Phobos armour have got this mastercrafted Oculus Bolt carbine and paired combat blades. They've got some nice abilities like Terror Troops, Grav Shoot, Smoke Grenades, Tactical Precision, Company Heroes and the Angels of Death. Then you've got a Primaris Librarian, which is right here. The old points cost, power points cost was a 7. They're now only a 5. Very, very decent. Exactly the same stat line there. They don't have any force staves or anything like that, but nice that they're a bit cheaper. Primaris Chaplain, right here. Old Codex, it was power points cost of 6. It's now only 4. Now that is really cheap considering they still have this Litanies of Hate. Instead of Litanies of Hate, it's called Litany of Hate. It does the same thing, but also you've got this Litany of Hate down below, and then one litany from the Litanies of Battle. So it's a lot like the Chaos Space Marines with their sort of chants or whatever they were called. Just buffs them even more for a cheaper price, which is fantastic. They've got the same weapons though. Tech Marine, I think Games Workshop definitely missed a trick not having a Primaris Tech Marine. I think that kind of sucks. If there are Primaris Chaplains and Lieutenants and Librarians and a slew, or slurry, a slew of brand new Primaris vehicles that need maintaining and repairing, and normal Space Marines can't hop in them, then one would imagine that there are Primaris Tech Marines around. I can just imagine these, you know, short Space Marine Tech Marines, you know, walking around these big new repulsor tanks and yeah, trying to fix them, and that's just going to look a bit odd, them going around fixing them when there are these big tall Primaris around. Anyway, power points cost have stayed exactly the same, stat line, all the same weapons, war gear, except for obviously now it's got Angels of Death. Librarian and Terminator armour, I think we have to move back a bit. In the old Codex it was a power points cost of a 9, which is like special character era. But now they've been reduced to a power points cost of a 6, so a whole 3 more power points less for the same stat line. Also, you're getting the same weapons, the same abilities. You've got the teleport strike. I mean, 6 power points is obviously way better than the 9 that they were charging before. So much to say I even think that was probably a misprint. Then you go to a normal chaplain. Power points in the old Codex was a 5, it's now a 4. Exactly the same stat line for a normal chaplain. Very cheap. But why would you go for a normal chaplain when a Primaris is exactly the same power points cost? They both have Litany of Hate. I mean, you can put the normal chaplain in a jump pack, but the newer Primaris one has that Absolver bolt pistol, which is a better range. It has 1 better wound at 5. It has a better attack as well. It has an additional attack as well. It's crazy. It really is. For the same power points cost, you can just get the Primaris chaplain. Moving on, Librarian in Phobos armour. There is no Librarian in Phobos armour, obviously, because that was a brand new model. That is a power points cost of a 5. It's the same stat line as the Librarian and Terminator, but he does have an extra attack, which is pretty cool. Has a 4-sword, bolt pistol, concealed position, camo cloak and psychic hood. Then you've got a chaplain in Terminator armour. This is where I don't really like the layout of the book. I think they should keep to you know, the unit itself. So have a chaplain, but have all the chaplains in order. And if you're going to have a librarian, have all the librarians, because you've gone for a Primaris chaplain here to a normal Tech Marine, to a librarian, to a chaplain, to a librarian, to it just is so confusing. And I'd much rather have it, you know, if you're going to have it Primaris chaplain, have that first, then have the normal chaplain, then have the chaplain and Terminator if you're going to do it that way. Anyway, moving on, chaplain and Terminator armour. He is right here. In the old Codex, he was power points cost of a 7, so I'm getting flashbacks of the Librarian as a power points cost of a 9 here. Now he's 2 points cheaper at a power points cost of a 5. He's exactly the same stat line as before, same weapons, Crozius Arcanum, same abilities, same Rosarius, and obviously now he's got the Litanies of Hate as well, or Litanies of Battle. And that is it. That is all of the HQ section. Some mentions in the older Codex is that in my opinion it's laid out much better. You've got captains all the way through there, If you're going to have it, you know, Primaris as a focus, have the Primaris Captain first, like I said, then Normal, then Terminator, or Primaris, Terminator, then Normal. This one kind of starts off like that, with a Primaris Captain in Gravis armor, Phobos armor, and then Terminator armor. Personally, if it was me, I'd stick with all the Primaris stuff first if you're going to push them. And like I always say in these codexes, I'd much rather have the data sheet, you know, at the bottom, and then a picture of the unit that the data sheet correlates to there. Even if it does, you know, mean double the pages for the rules part of the codex. Anyway, that is my HQ section breakdown and the points costs and things. As you can see, there are 0 characters in the new Codex Space Marines. It's just, you know, a codex for sort of making your own chapter in a way. If you want any rules for the other Space Marine chapters, obviously there'll be supplements coming out, but essentially that's costing you £42.50 for, like, I say, a complete edition of an army. But there we go. The formula has been like this for a long time. Before Primaris came about, they used to have one codex for Space Marines with all the characters in, and now I guess Space Marines, if you search for them on Games Workshop, they've got the most units and models of any other army. It's absolutely incredible how bloated they are as an army, and so I guess it was just time for them to do that. I doubt they're going to do that with all of the other factions. I really doubt that, but there we go. Anyway, what do you guys think of the HQ section? Please do put it in the comments below. It'd be great to hear from you. I'll be doing more videos like this, so there will be a troop unit breakdown video, and fast attack, elites, heavy support, flyers, and so on, just to compare those units and models with the rest. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching. The Emperor protects.